Beneath the sands of Egypt, the wind hides whispers older than the pyramids themselves, whispers of devotion, of sacrifice, of promises carved in blood. But every few centuries, someone listens, and the desert remembers. Dr. Layla Nassar stood beneath the soft hum of fluorescent lights, her gloved hands trembling slightly as she brushed dust from the surface of an artifact newly arrived from Aswan. It was a fragment of black obsidian, etched with symbols that shimmered faintly even under the sterile, artificial light of the Cairo Museum's restoration lab. She shouldn't have been working this late. The city outside had long fallen into the hurried rhythm of the night, but sleep had become a stranger to her, replaced by a quiet, gnawing obsession that tasted like sand and memory. The artifact's label was infuriatingly vague, reading only, "Recovered from the Temple of the Eternal Voice." No official record existed of such a temple. Not in the archives, not in any expedition notes, not in the dusty tomes of forgotten history that Layla had made her life's work. It was a ghost, a myth. Yet, Layla had seen that name before. It was scrawled in her father's journal, the one they'd found beside his abandoned tent in the western desert. The year he vanished without a trace, swallowed by the dunes. As she turned the cool, smooth fragment in her hands, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration ran through her fingertips. And for a split second a sound reached her ears, a voice, impossibly distant and low, speaking a language that didn't belong to this world. It was a guttural, resonant whisper that seemed to echo not in the room, but inside her own skull. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Then the lights above her flickered violently, casting the lab in strobing shadows. A soft thud echoed from the far side of the room, the distinct sound of a heavy glass display case shifting on its base. Layla forced a nervous laugh, her voice tight. Old building, bad wiring. But as she glanced down, the reflection staring back at her from the polished obsidian was not her own. The following morning, sunlight poured over Cairo, washing the ancient skyline in a familiar haze of gold and sand. Layla met with Dr. Kamal Farid, her mentor and former professor, in a crowded cafe near Tahrir Square, the air thick with the scent of strong coffee and shisha. He studied her with concerned eyes as she laid out her findings on the small, round paper printouts of the strange symbols, photocopies from her father's notes, and her impassioned theory. She was convinced the Temple of the Eternal Voice was real, buried somewhere beneath the vast, shifting dunes near Abu Simbel. "Layla," Kamal said quietly, his spoon stirring a slow vortex in his coffee, "your father's disappearance was tragic. I know how much it wounded you, but chasing ghosts won't bring him back." His voice was gentle, but the words felt like a dismissal. "It's not ghosts, Kamal," she replied, her own tone calm but burning with an intensity that made him lean back. "It's proof. You found something the records never acknowledged, something that history forgot." Kamal sighed, a weary, heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of the years he'd spent in the field. "And some things," he murmured, looking out at the bustling street, "were never meant to be found." Still, her conviction was a force of nature. Within the week, through a mixture of academic rigor and sheer stubborn will, she had her permit and her team. By the next full moon, Layla was standing in the desert once more, the same endless sea of sand that had swallowed her father, the silence now feeling less like peace and more like a held breath. The desert wind carried the scent of dust and secrets. The team's tents flapped under the brilliant, cold light of the moon, and the air shimmered with a residual heat that clung to the sand long after midnight. On the 5th day, Layla's team had uncovered it, a stone staircase, perfectly preserved, descending into the dark earth. It was the kind of find that could rewrite history books, a discovery that archaeologists dream of. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the local workers packed their tools and refused to go further. They said the ground whispered after dark. Layla, ever the skeptic, dismissed their fears as superstition. She descended alone, the single beam of her flashlight cutting a nervous path through the oppressive darkness. The air grew cool and still. Her flashlight trembled across hieroglyphs, untouched for millennia, their colors still vibrant. But one symbol repeated over and over, carved with an unnerving frequency. He who speaks after death. At the base of the stairs lay a sealed stone door, adorned with intricate carvings of a priest kneeling before a mirror of black obsidian. And there, etched in a script older than the hieroglyphs, a language she barely recognized, was an inscription. Speak his name, and he will answer. Listen long enough, and you will never speak again. Her breath fogged in the air, a strange phenomenon in the desert's warmth. And then it came faintly and possibly her father's voice, whispering her name from the other side of the stone. Layla. She stumbled back, her flashlight shaking, the beam dancing wildly across the stone. Dad? She choked out, her heart hammering against her ribs. The voice came again closer this time, gentler, filled with the sorrowful warmth she remembered so well. You found me. The obsidian fragment in her pocket, her only link to him, pulsed with a sudden, distinct warmth against her leg. By the 3rd night, the dig site was gripped by a quiet mutiny. The team refused to work. 2 of the workers, their faces pale with terror, claimed they'd seen a figure standing in the sealed chamber, its silhouette visible for just a moment before vanishing. This was despite the fact that the stone door had not been opened. Layla decided to prove them wrong, to shatter their fear with hard, undeniable fact. She took a crowbar and with gritted teeth and straining muscles, pried open the ancient seal herself. Stone ground against stone with a deafening screech, and stale, perfumed air escaped the heavy scent of myrrh and something older, something sharp and metallic, like old blood. Inside, the chamber was pristine. Unlit torches still stood upright in their sconces, as if time had stopped the moment the door was sealed. And at the center of the chamber stood a mirror. Not of silver glass, but a massive, polished slab of black obsidian, identical to the fragment she carried. Her hands trembled as she stepped inside, the air humming with a strange energy. Dad, she whispered into the silence. The surface of the mirror rippled like dark water. For a single, impossible heartbeat, she saw him, her father's reflection, standing right behind her, his face etched with relief, smiling with tears in his eyes. Then his lips moved, but the words were not his own. The reflection mouthed a silent warning. He's listening. The image of her father darkened, and behind it, something vast and terrible moved in the jet-black shadows of the mirror. It was a shape robed in gold and bone, its face hidden in darkness, its mouth whispering in 1,000 voices at once. Layla scrambled back, tripping over her own feet as the mirror's surface hummed like a living, breathing thing, and then absolute silence. Later, huddled in her tent against the chill of the desert night, Layla replayed the audio from the small recorder she'd carried into the tomb. She expected to hear static, the grinding of the stone door, the echo of her own voice. But what she heard instead froze her blood. After her own whispered question, "Dad?" another voice responded. It was low, resonant, and spoke in perfect ancient Egyptian. The next day, a frantic call to Dr. Kamel confirmed her worst fears. He translated part of it for her, his voice strained over the satellite phone. The priest of the Eternal speaks again. The living has called him by name. Layla's hands shook as she stared at her notes, her eyes falling on one line from her father's journal, a line she had underlined in bold ink months ago. He who calls upon the eternal voice will never stop hearing it. Outside, the wind shifted. But it wasn't wind anymore. It was whispering. Soft, sibilant, and endless. A chorus of voices on the edge of hearing. And when Layla turned off the lantern, the polished surface of the obsidian fragment lying on her table across the tent shimmered faintly in the darkness, as if something on the other side was patiently waiting for her to speak again. The desert keeps its promises. The dead remember the sound of their names. And sometimes, when the living call out into the silence, something ancient answers back. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this spooky story, please hit the like button and share it with a friend. Subscribe for more content and check out our other stories. Part 2, The Priest of Shadows, coming soon. Don't miss. Goodbye.